From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. Hey, James, how are you today?
I'm doing great. And yourself, Steve?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back for another show, and we have a guest that we both have gotten to meet on other podcasts, and I've known for quite some time. And without further ado, I'll introduce Brian Magrogan from Verrex. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, Steve. Hi, James. Thank you guys very much for having me. Looking forward to a great conversation today.
So we appreciate you being here. And I actually got to know Brian quite a number of years ago when I was doing programming and he was learning programming, I think, at the time, and we got to work side by side on a few systems at Verrex, and it was pretty neat. And I've seen his career take a couple of different turns over time, and let you, Brian, give us a bit of background and history on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was thinking about it, Steve, when you sent over the stuff earlier, and it was like, wow, I looked at the date and I was like, next year will be 20 years in the industry. So it's, and trying to think back over all the things we've done. You know, I started as a on-site support technician back in 2004, just helping people set up their meetings, kind of be in tier 2 support of, if a room goes down, let's go figure out what's going on, and kind of learning the ropes right from the very beginning and progressing from there. I wasn't so much the shirt and tie type of person in the office every single day in front of everybody. I like to get my hands dirty. I like to, you know, actually like work with my hands and do different things. So I grew out of that on-site role and into a lead tech role and doing installations and doing different things, and grew to a senior tech where I was actually supervising other techs, bringing jobs to bringing jobs all the way through. I loved programming for a very long time, since way before that. I think back in high school, I worked in the media lab for a while. I worked in the computer lab for a while, always playing around, always doing different things. Learned BASIC and C and the Visual Basic, and always played there. And when I was commissioning projects, the last step was always the programmer would come to site, and it was like sometimes I would be in good shape and I'd be there waiting for a half a day or a day for the programmer. I was like, well, why don't I just do this myself too? Like, let's do this. And so finally I convinced the programmer, can I just have the source code? Like, I'll run through it, I'll test everything and do it all and make sure that it's all good. If it needs any tweaks, I'll talk to you before I make them, or I'll let you make them and send them back to me. And before you knew it, I was doing that too. So, and then I think when I was trying to look at my timeline and figure it out, it was like 2008 or so, I finally took the role and stepped into an actual programmer role. And that was great. That was an awesome move. I took a leap of faith. I moved from Boston to New Jersey for it, to come to the Verrex corporate headquarters. And it was great. It was really, really awesome. We went from having just a single programmer, having to outsource, probably half the jobs at least, to we were able to take on pretty much everything internally, which was a lot of fun. It was a challenge, but it was really, really good. And grew a lot there, learned a lot, was always kind of tempted and interested by the manufacturer side of the house. I'm also a networking guy. I love my computers. I love networks, love all of that. So an opportunity arose there to jump to Crestron into the Fusion support group, working a lot of networking, also get to keep my hands in the programming, teaching people how to actually program for Fusion, but also deploy it, do the server side. That was a lot of fun. Really love that. And then when I was thinking back through this, it's so interesting just to think of the arc and the different ways that things happened. When I was younger, and even when my wife and I were first married, traveling was no problem. It was a lot of fun, actually. You go meet different people, see different places. But all of a sudden, when our first daughter came along, it was like, oh, wait, hold on. I need to be home. I need to be home on a regular schedule. So I tried to shift gears a little bit and move into a software engineer role at Crestron, where I would be home more and I wouldn't have to travel very much. And then all of a sudden that role had to travel a lot. And so I got very lucky. Verrex knocked on my door, and we're looking to bring in a third person. We're looking for somebody who has some networking skills as well, because we feel that's a place that where things are going and we need some help there. and we'll let you be fully remote, so you can be home all the time. I was like, okay, great, I love it. So, and I came back, and I've been back for 7.5 years, I think now, going on 8, and it's fantastic. So even before the pandemic, 100% remote. We travel when we need to travel, but we do it very sparingly. So that's always helpful from the family side of things, and making sure we're there. And I think it honestly helps us because we can work on multiple things at one time. And that for me, I like staying busy. I like being busy. I like helping multiple people and getting multiple things going. And so that's helpful. When I travel, I can really truly only work on one thing at a time. I might go back to the hotel room at night and work on something else, but during the day I can't get multiple things in. So it's kind of where I started and kind of where I got to. But it was a lot of fun. So it's been an interesting 19, almost 20 years.
Wow, that's and I can say I hope I wasn't one of the ones that you were waiting on to have programs delivered, but but I do remember when you were asking, "Hey, can I see what this looks like?" And so I actually vividly remember that. So, and I remember us working together at the Verrex shop many years ago.
It's interesting because that's one of the ways that I learn is to pick things apart and take a look and see and to break it. And to, I think I forget exactly when it was, but I was always intrigued by Crestron in the box. And I was like, hey, purchasing, can I buy a CP2E, please? Pretty please. And they reached out to Crestron and said, can we get an extra discount for an employee to buy one for their own so they can learn? Like, yeah, sure, no problem. And I would just sit there at night, again, way before having a family. Now I would just sit there and I would program and I would do different things and see. And I think in one of your previous episodes when Rich was on, I was listening to Rich talk about it, and he would do this at night and he would program chess or checkers or something. And at the end of the night when he shut down, it was gone. So, a little bit beyond that in terms of we could just keep going the next day. But yeah, I'd do it for hours and hours and hours and hours. So, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So, but I never got in the situation waiting on you guys at all. So
appreciate that. But I'm glad we were part of your history. So that's really neat.
Yeah, it's nice. And it's always, honestly, it's great to learn from people. It's a wonderful industry in that nature. How, I learned a lot from you. I learned a lot from your team and, everything. And I learn a lot from my team now. I hope I impart knowledge on them and they impart knowledge on me. And it's wonderful in the industry how we kind of hand that around, and everybody's kind of always learning, which is great.
Very cool. James, kind of bring you into the conversation on this. What are your thoughts about the idea of being hands-on versus being remote and that type of arrangement? Because I think that it could be looked at both ways.
Yeah, both ways have their pros and the cons. I like being hands-on. I'll admit I'm very timid on remote, and that's because I almost myself almost caused an issue. Because story was early on, my coworker and I were updating code for one of our buildings, a remote building. He was on site, I was remote. And he would go into the room, say, hey, I'm in this room. I would send the code. He would test it, say, hey, everything's good. And we would move on. Well, we were getting down to the last room. It was coming up to quitting time. I haven't heard from him. And I'm waiting, and knock on wood, all my code's been working. I'm waiting and waiting. I haven't heard from him. So I text him. I'm like, hey, can I send code? I heard nothing. I'm like, you know what? It's 4 o'clock. I'm sending code. So I text him, I'm sending code, hit the send button. I get a text back. No, the president is speaking.
Oh boy.
I'm like, too late. Yep. Luckily, it's just a simple reboot. Everything came back up. There was no issues or anything, which was great. But yeah, I totally forgot that he was there also supporting an event that our president was speaking at. And yeah, I sent that in the middle of him giving his presentation.
Hey, it worked out though in the end, right? Like,
It did, but from now on, when I send code, I'm always making sure I'm in the room.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I always pull up the X panel. I always take a look at however I can look in the space, make sure it's good. I'm pretty lucky in that fashion. You know, we generally have a tech there, like you did, you know, and I don't necessarily push the code. I'll jump on their laptop if they need help doing it and use that as a teaching opportunity so that I'm not the one pushing code remotely. But yeah. That I can understand how that might sour it a little bit and be like, whoa, 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 that could have gone real sideways, real bad.
Oh yeah, and like I said, everything worked, so that was all good. But and there's sometimes I'll do things remote, but I try as much as I can to be in person.
Brian, one of the things I wanted to get into because I find this fascinating, being a third party and working with different integrators is that a programmer, a lot of times in integration companies, they're the programmer, but they're also maybe the person who commissions the system or the person who is does some field engineering or is the QC. And talk a little bit about that because a lot of times it's not really always that clear, because we've come in to fill a programmer's role and we've been told like, what do you mean you're not going to do these other things? That's what our programmer usually does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, it's quite interesting. And for me, I want to say I'm a control freak, but I do like to have control over stuff. So I enjoy that. I enjoy knowing the steps in the process, and I feel like just from my own knowledge base and knowing what I'm doing thoroughly, I like to have that knowledge of every step in the process. You know, I like to be involved in the design phase, you know, when we're putting the sketches together, you know, not obviously not in the fabrication phase, but when it hits QA, you know, I like to be involved there and how we're setting it up, how we're bringing it online, getting it loaded. But yeah, you know, I was thinking about it versus like, you know, when I was an on-site tech or an installation tech, the programmer would provide code to our office, to our QA guys. Our QA guys would test it all, come back with them with a punch list. If I push this button, this doesn't work. You know, this display doesn't turn on. Whatever they, you know, come back through, give them a rev for code. Same thing when I hit the field. You know, I give them a punch list, get it back. But we did all of it. From the tech level, it's just the programmer, you know, providing updates to code. Now, you know, we do firmware, we review the DSP files, we go back to the engineers with changes, sometimes wiring changes. You know, we'll do everything. I was actually just having a conversation with my counterpart yesterday. We're doing more and more VC4 deployments, and he doesn't particularly like it because we're so responsible for it. You know, not there aren't really a whole lot of people at our company that truly understand the underworkings of it all. And so it just kind of falls in our wheelhouse. But I do kind of feel like I have to be a jack of all trades. And I always, that term kind of gets me a little bit because jack of all trades, master of none. But like, I like to feel like I can really dig into my role and know enough about every other role to be helpful there too. But yeah, we do kind of touch everything along the way.
I would say that kind of defines the role of a programmer for sure. But and I mean, I've always been impressed with the way Verrex goes about things. Many other companies are not as disciplined and regimented, so you're lucky in that regard.
Yeah, for sure. We do put a lot of effort into that, right? We try to put our best people everywhere. Obviously, you want your best people everywhere, but you know, we know that there are certain points in the process where you have to be our best, right? And QA being probably one of the biggest pieces, because that's where in a controlled environment we can catch so much stuff. And you know, probably an hour spent in our quality assurance department versus the field is probably 4 hours easily. You know, I have guys there that I know and trust that have been doing this, you know, same as me. Like our lead QA tech was originally our delivery driver, and he's just the same kind of, you know, just enjoys getting dirty and everything and working on it. And when he comes to me and says this display isn't working, I know he's already nulled it. I know he's already tried a different cable. You know, I know that he's checked the port on the endpoint to see. I don't have to second guess him on that kind of stuff. I know he's already done it all. So, you know, it's those type of things. Because then when I know when it leaves the shop and it gets to the field and they say the display doesn't work, I can say, okay, this worked in the shop. Let's walk through this stuff. So, but yeah, I do really like our process and the way that it works out for the most part. There's always holes that happen, but I think that happens everywhere.
Absolutely. James, do you think that outsiders understand these things about programmers and what goes into making a programmer successful, but more importantly, like what are we've had conversations before on this show and others about what is the value of programmers, or where will they continue to be needed? I think what Brian said speaks a lot to that.
Yeah, and no, I don't think outsiders really know what programming does. It's still kind of like AV. Like people outside AV doesn't understand AV. Like when we show them the cost of something, they're like, "Well, I can go to Walmart and get it for a third of that price, if not much more or less." But they don't understand, and I think not just us program, but even AV, we need to continue to show where we bring the value. And yeah, people aren't going to understand. They're not going to realize what it takes until we can say, hey, we can solve that problem for you. We can make, you picking up 10 different remotes, we can have it, you hit one button. And when we can show that, demonstrate that, and then that becomes the valuable to our clients.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good point, James, with that piece of it, and getting them to understand all of that and what goes into actually making it work. Like you said, I have people all the time that tell me, well, why does that piece of equipment cost so much more than I can walk into Best Buy and buy it for? I'm like, well, you're not looking at commercial level gear that's meant to be on 20 hours a day versus meant to be used 2 hours a week.
Yeah,
so yeah. I can take that commercial, I can take that, consumer grade stuff and put it in, and in a year you'll be writing me a check to replace it all. And I one of the things sometimes I struggle with, which can be very tricky, and finding the right way to bring this up with end users and with designers and stuff, is when we don't spec the right gear, people still expect me to be able to provide control like a professional piece of gear, but they put in something consumer level, and there are just certain things that I can't do. That, if I have to switch to IR emulation because that display does not have either LAN control reliably or have 232 control, all I can do is, if I'm lucky, I have discrete on and off and discrete inputs. But if somebody messes with it locally, I've got no way to know. So,
yeah. And a little side tangent here. Probably stay tuned, because I'll be probably writing about this shortly, if not before this airs. But right now, yeah, we get that with the AV gear. We get that with AV program. We get that with AV gear. No one questions network gear. No one questions computers. No one questions software packages. They're like, oh, you want to charge us $5,000 for that? Okay, whatever. Or, oh, a network switch costs $3,500. I can go to Best Buy and pick one up for $500. They're not doing that. Why are they questioning AV? And that's what I think the whole industry needs to do a better job of. We are valuable and we have our reasons why we do things the way we do
them. But you brought up a point earlier too, which I think really helps elaborate on it, though, is where we can show our value is in that interaction and helping to coordinate, right? A lot of the times the IT guys still just brush us off as, oh, you're just AV, you're just AV, you're just AV. But when I can go in and have an intelligent discussion with him and lay out what I need in the IT guy's terms, tell him why, give him the reasons, give him all the security details he needs, all that, all of a sudden now I'm a player in that, and I take out the middleman, right? Like, end user might still be there and see that, but they know, oh wait, hold on, I don't have to go back and forth 6 times with questions from IT to you, back to IT, and show our value there, and show, part of the reason why we have to charge what we have to charge is, we got to build in that time.
Yep.
I'd like to throw out an interesting question, because I say this a lot too, is that, so programmers, because they make things look so easy and go so smoothly, unfortunately, people don't value that because they don't see the pain and the effort and all that goes in. And the better a programmer you are, the better, the more easy, the more seamless you make it. And people, and so it's almost like a inversely proportional reward, right? So I don't know, just want to see if you guys want to comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
After you, James, after you.
Okay. The only thing that this whole conversation reminds me of, and kind of Steve nailed it there too, is I heard this at a graduation, a keynote speaker, and I'm sure I probably mentioned this before. I'm sure everyone heard different versions of it. Is the factory and the screw, where there's a factory machine, all the machines stop. The owner of the factory is going nuts. You call a mechanic in. Mechanic comes in, opens up the panel, turns the screw, shuts the panel, everything fires up. Factory owner is like, you saved us billions of dollars. This is great. How much I owe you? And the tech gives them, say, $1,000. What, $1,000? All you did was turn the screw. How is that $1,000? And the tech was like, no, it was $1 for turning the screw. It's $999 for knowing which screw to turn.
Right. And how much to turn it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're paying for that, all that knowledge, right? That knowledge is our worth in the end. Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that in a lot of different phrasing, right? Is you paid for me to know which button to push. You paid for me to know how to do it in one click. But yeah, I mean, you're right, Steve. I have, libraries of scripts now to do so many different things. And I'll have a text laptop up on one screen where I'm pushing firmware and I'm loading code. I'm doing it all with a script. So done. I'm still working on code on this other screen, and I'm helping somebody else in chat on my third screen, and just kind of checking in on each one as they're going. And I don't think I actually recently I'm very excited about this. I don't know that my excitement is translated to the rest of my team. I finally got a way to bill multiple projects at the same time. Before it was always a linear, start time, stop time, start time, stop time. And now I can just bill half an hour here, half an hour here, an hour here, 4 hours here. And so I can bill multiple things at the same time to show, hey, in my 8-hour workday, I actually worked on 12 billable hours worth of stuff. So, and I feel like it helps our case in a lot of cases too, to show that, we need another person, or to show that, we need some better training in this area, because, we're using my time, and I don't want to sound, I always worry that I'm sounding a bit stuck up when I say this, but, for somebody to load firmware and to do that, to take away from my time of producing other stuff, my time, just the way that it gets billed, is more expensive than it is for, your entry-level tech who's learning, who can, just be shown, here's how we load firmware. I need you to monitor this, check it out, let me know when it's done. Instead of me having to constantly check back in, it's a much more cost-effective way to do it. And when we do need to be very conscious of costs to clients, that's how we can do it, right? We can make sure that we're not using, the guy that makes twice as much or builds at twice as much as this person to do that person's job.
Yeah, I think you hit it right, very well there, Brian. Is sometimes, and that's something I actually had a conversation with my team, is where I need to get them up, and they're learning, they're doing good. This is not a knock on them. I really feel my team is doing good, but there's times I find myself doing some of the daily operations, and now I am a supervisor, and I'm sitting there, it's like, I have so much I want to do for the team, but I can't do it because I'm doing these daily operations. So there's things I can't get done until my team is at that level where they can handle a lot of this stuff. And they're getting there. Trust me. Every day I'm offloading stuff I'm doing and that they're just handling as they learn and build their skills. So it's great, but it's still, like you're saying, Brian, if you can offload task of just even loading firmware, then that allows you to focus on the more complicated code. If you can't do that because you're loading firmware, now complicated code is put to the side.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those catch-22s.
I would like to throw it out to our audience too. What are some ways that we can demonstrate that what programmers face in terms of their challenges, but also like how do we show this value that we provide without, like Brian said, having an attitude or being perceived as having an air about us. But there's a lot of things that programmers do behind the scenes that don't often get recognized, and then it's not realized until the programmer isn't in the equation or somebody else has to take their place. I think that's where we're going to leave this one, but we're going to continue our conversation with Brian on the next episode. So please stay tuned. But until then, Brian, how can people get in touch with you, learn more about what you're up to, learn more about Verrex or anything that you want to talk about?
You can find me on most of the socials at B Magrogan. You can learn more about Verrex at verrex.com and what we do. And if there's anything you need, please reach out and hit the contact us or send me a message, send me an email, a direct message, anything. Always happy to chat.
And if you also want to check out, Brian's been on a few episodes of A State of Control, so check those two out as well on avnation.tv. James, how can people get in touch with you, learn what you're up to?
Again, you can Google me. You'll find me. Twitter or X at AV_James King. Writer for the Higher Ed Digital Magazine, the IT and AV column, and sing HEPMA. I'm out there. You'll find me.
And for me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media, my company Control Concepts at controlconcepts.net. But what's most important to us is that you follow this podcast. You can follow us at AV Programmer Pod on Twitter or X, whatever we want to call it these days. And but also reach out to us in all the other fashions. Leave us a rating, review. We're on YouTube on the video version and your favorite podcast player audio wise, and we'd like to hear from you. We'd like to have more guests on like Brian, and we'd like to continue to tell the stories that programmers have, and also interact and build community as we've always stood for. So please reach out to us, let us know what you think, and until then, this has been Ask the Programmer.